How did this project come about? Like, I mean, I guess Aaron, if you want to go into the movie Anonymous a little bit, and then kind of go from there.
There was a film called Anonymous that came out a year ago, last November, and it was a Roland Emmerich production. Centropolis, the company that I work for, produced it, and it was about the Shakespeare authorship controversy, but it was about Edward de Vere, his life. And these two fine ladies here consulted on that screenplay, and that's basically how this whole thing came about.
Yeah, we'd been studying the Shakespeare authorship question for about 15, 20 years, and when we heard that Roland Emmerich was going after the question to a huge worldwide audience, I made a phone call, and this guy picked it up. And without Aaron, we wouldn't be here today, and this film would not have been made, and also without Roland Emmerich, who has an extreme dedication to the question and to the inquiry, and opening the inquiry, and trying to engage the question and encourage open debate on the question. So it's really Aaron and Roland Emmerich is the reason this film got made. As budding filmmakers perhaps out in the audience, this isn't a good example because we're debut directors and we won the lottery, literally. A lot of documentary film workers work a lifetime to try to get a film made, and we won the lottery on the first time out because of Roland and because of Aaron letting this story get told.
And Roland wanted to be here.
Yes, but he's in Montreal shooting right now a film called White House Down, which is the takeover of the White House, a lot of explosions, guns, and that kind of thing.
Natural progression from Shakespeare.
Natural progression.
Exactly. So he goes from Shakespeare to White House, blowing it up again, that kind of thing.
And
so he sends his greetings, though.
And I guess, Lisa and Laura, let's go a little bit about your background. You know, how did you, I mean, I know this has been a pet project for you guys for a while. How did this start up? Like, where did this idea come from, and why did it kind of surface the way it did?
You know, it's pretty prophetic, actually. I wasn't told about the authorship question. I experienced it firsthand as a student at the University of Minnesota, where I was acting in Shakespeare. I didn't want to study Shakespeare, by the way. I wanted to do film and modern stuff. But my professor insisted that I start acting Shakespeare. And as I started engaging in the scenes with my fellow actors, I started to sense the subtext or the hidden author behind the text, believe it or not. I didn't know anything about Shakespeare and nothing about the Shakespeare authorship question. But I started to sense this hidden author, and I went to a professor at the University of Minnesota, theater professor, and I kept approaching him about these feelings or these experiences that I was having working with the plays themselves. And he was a tenured big-time professor at the university, Big Ten University, so he didn't say much for a few months, but I was pretty persistent, and finally I approached him in his office hours. And he gave me a documentary. He went like this, Hush Hush, and it was PBS Frontline did a documentary in 1989 called The Shakespeare Mystery. And in it, Edward de Vere was introduced, and some of the people that you actually see in this documentary, and that started the whole thing. From that moment on, I pretty much left my acting career in front of the camera and went behind, and we started documenting the Shakespeare authorship question. 15 years later, Roland Emmerich steps up, decides to take it to a worldwide audience, and the rest is this film.
So basically, when we were developing Anonymous, that screenplay, Lisa and Laura came involved and were consulting on it, and at the same time we're discussing doing a documentary alongside the feature film, which took a lot of liberties in terms of history and stuff like that. So he wanted something to back up basically that story, and that's where this came about. And it's been, because Anonymous, that film took 7 years to get made because studios pulled the plug on it because it's not a very popular subject matter. A lot of people go to the theater to see Shakespeare today. So that came and went several times, and finally when it came back 2 years ago, Lisa and Laura were there.
Roland greenlit it, and it was made in about a year and a half.
Okay. You know, obviously a lot of the footage you guys take, I mean, some of you that may not have seen Anonymous, a lot of the B-roll footage is taken from that film. So how did that kind of transpire in terms of, you guys had this story you wanted to tell. Did you negotiate that with Roland? Was that something that you said, well, we know we're going to get this footage from here. This is our story that we're going to do interviews with. I mean, talk a little bit about that, I guess.
Well, in the beginning, we were given carte blanche. Like, we were told we could use anything from the film. But that was talking with Roland, the director, and not the studio, Sony, which has a whole different opinion on how much film you can use from their project. So we went in thinking we could use it all, using it all as B-roll to populate the film, but then when it came down to actually going down to Sony and picking up the footage, they were not very helpful, and it was like pulling teeth to get any footage from them. So,
But it's great because you have to be ready for all these little surprises, and it forced our narrative and our storytelling into different directions. We became much more dependent on our interview and thought we would need narrator. When we lost the footage, you have to get creative and solve the problems, and we found the story in the interviews, and it became a much more living piece than like what you would see like on the History Channel or Discovery, where it's a narrator-driven narrative and you get retold the story every 10 minutes. It really became a smarter, funner piece to try to craft together.
And let's talk about that a little bit. You guys, from the onset, were going that direction, like Nat Geo or Discovery Channel, as opposed to a theater release. And that's a whole different approach, I would imagine, that some of these students might want.
Yeah, when we met with Roland originally, and it looked like he was going to greenlight the documentary, he said we could go in any direction. By the way, as directors, we had full artistic control. Our executive producer did not step in. He certainly looked at some of the edits, but which was another dream come true. And he said, shoot long on your interviews, do as much as you want. And we thought I wanted a more festival, theatrical type of film. That was my dream, documenting the authorship question. But then we had a producer on board with Aaron who knew that we also had to get this out, with Anonymous. So we did try on that History Channel type broadcast approach.
Well, we were early on in negotiations with History Channel and Discovery about doing a Shakespeare authorship documentary, but they wanted something that was short and to the point and a lot of hand-holding. And that's obviously not what this film is. It is a longer piece. It's very classic in terms of like a 3-act structure and feature documentary. So those discussions towards the end of our film slowly unraveled. And unfortunately, we didn't have that outlet available to us. So we had to look for other outlets, and that's why we ended up going with the digital distribution through iTunes and that sort of thing, video on demand. And hopefully we're currently in talks with.
And you guys even, that's even changed, the timeline on this. You guys, Anonymous started, what, in 05 or so?
No, originally it did, but it didn't start shooting until 2010.
But, since then, and when you guys came on as a documentary, the video on demand, the iTunes, the Netflix, that's even changed drastically. And I think that's something that, could be made note of in terms of distribution, that's evolved.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many other avenues in terms of getting your film out there today than just your classic, theater distribution. TV obviously is old school, but today, everyone's, I don't know, you guys probably all watch your films and stuff on your computer, or you buy them on iTunes or whatever, and that's definitely, a lot of people are going that direction with their films to get them out there. So it's one of the directions we're taking with this, and hopefully PBS in 2013, and foreign is a whole different discussion, but yeah, most of it is digital today.
I just learned about this in my very small involvement. Like when you talk about Shakespeare, it's taboo to a lot of people. I would say on the same par as religion in terms of, people are very strongly opinionated about what they believe or disbelieve or prove or disprove on this. What was that like in terms of, some of the people you chose to interview, some of the people that refused to interview, like in terms of getting your story out there? What was that like in terms of picking and choosing some of that stuff?
I think that's a great question, but I want to first start by asking the audience who had heard about the authorship question before coming here today.
That's impressive.
You guys are brilliant.
Excellent. Wow. And did you know that it was kind of a taboo or heretical sort of subject to engage in? Yes? No? Yeah. So, kudos for being here. It's surprising going internationally, talking about the question and reviewing the question around the world, the strong, passionate opinions on both sides of this debate. And again, we've been documenting it for 15, 20 years, and when we're choosing, obviously bringing the anti-Stratfordians, as they're called, or the Oxfordians, or people who believe that someone other than the Stratford man wrote the plays, obviously getting them to come on board. was fairly easy.
Gotcha.
And we have the best of the anti-Stratfordians represented on camera. And I would encourage you to look into, at these names and on the internet and look at more of what they've published. As far as the Stratfordians go, we have two of the biggest heavy hitters on camera. 2 or 3 of them absolutely refused to show up, ridiculed the film, ridiculed Roland for making anonymous. So it was very difficult to get the other side represented, but in the end, because we'd been documenting it for quite some time and doing some really interesting negotiations with them, we were able to get the chairman of Birthplace Trust. We're grateful that they showed up for it. But it's tricky business. It's a
And you guys
tightrope.
traveled a lot. I mean, what were the production, like, go a little bit through, I mean, 18 countries? I mean, was that, or something to that
Oh, I
effect?
wish
Was
it
that-
was 18
No.
countries.
Yeah,
That
that'd
would've
have
been a
been
lot of
nice.
fun.
We wanted to get to Italy in the end and track. You can track Oxford through Italy, and that would have been wonderful. But in
We
the
didn't have
end,
the money, though.
we
Lost no money.
we shot in the United States at a Shakespeare conference in Portland, Oregon. But then, of course, on the set of Anonymous, which was in Berlin, Babelsberg Studio, which is one of the oldest studios in the world, where Anonymous was shot. We were there 2 or 3 times throughout that shoot. And then, of course, we shot all over 18 locations throughout the United Kingdom.
That's where I got 18.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I
It
knew
is
there was an
18.
18 there somewhere.
Yeah.
In New York City, too.
In New York
And New
City,
York
too,
City.
252,000 words of interview were taken for the 11,000 that you saw on the screen today.
Wow.
So that was a significant edit, and it really was the turning point in the film for us. Like I said, we did try to go the traditional History Channel, Discovery, narrator-driven format. We actually had a rough draft done, a rough cut done in Washington, D.C. And it just wasn't going the direction we wanted, and we pulled the plug on that, and I went to North Carolina with all the interview and started from scratch. Got a 9-hour edit together that I took, by the grace of our producer, Aaron Boyd, to Los Angeles. And then
Recut.
about 6 months later, we were finished. So it was really taking the story out of the narrator or a presenter's hands and putting it in the key players in the authorship question, putting it in their mouths. That really was the turning point. And like I said, it's 252,000 words for the 11,000 that make the screen.
We have a 9-hour cut. If
Yeah, we have an 9-hour cut. If you got some
Film
time.
class score, all night. No, but that actually brings up a good point. You know, I mean, they say, you know, there's the film you write, and then there's the
Yeah.
film you shoot, and
Yeah.
there's the film you edit. So,
Yeah.
you know, when you guys, starting with the first conception of this, and then going through the trenches and getting on that side, you know, how much of it was what you initially thought it would be? How much of it did you have to sacrifice? How much of it did it evolve? You know,
That's
what
a
was
really
that?
great question. I had in mind 17 scenes for the 17th Earl of Oxford, and I called them my string of pearls, and I knew that somehow I wanted to link them. And we worked right after we did principal photography. We worked with our other producer, huge senior producer, Discovery, National Geographic, fantastic documentary filmmaker named Patrick Prentice. And he had an idea, and we'd have discussions about what I wanted or what we wanted in these 17 scenes. And after a few months, you know, I just got an email that said, Lisa, I just can't make this film. I can't do it. And he went back to that traditional Discovery History Channel format and put together the film he thought he could do. And he did it. It just in the end wasn't, we wanted a piece where you weren't told the question, the authorship question, and you weren't told what to believe necessarily one way or another, or a narrator or presenter's opinion about the authorship question. We wanted it more of an unguided tour of the question, and so
Surprisingly, what you see is kind of what we wanted.
yeah.
But we
believe it or
came,
not,
but we came about it all the wrong ways. But
it took twice as long to get there.
it twice as long to get.
I mean,
Yeah.
is there anything that, you know, that you would do differently, or is there things, I don't want to say regrets, but are there things that, you know, now having, you know, this insight to it, like that, your approach, or?
I think that with documentary film, it's constantly evolving. I mean, the story is. I've only worked on a couple, so I'm by no means an expert, but I think there's a lot of documentary filmmakers here, but it changes. You have a vision for something, and you go out there and capture it, but then it doesn't always adhere to your treatment or whatever you come up with. So you definitely just have to be able to adjust, and I think that's what we've had to do. And it unfortunately took a year to do so, or a year and a half, and you just adjust along the way.
He says that, but I mean, a lot of documentaries take a heck of a lot longer, and the time frame that we were forced into, they wanted it released with Anonymous. We didn't make it, but I think that's going to help in the end. to do a documentary in a year, I don't think I'd do that again. But it was an aggressive schedule, definitely.
I was just thinking, like, so I guess, now, it's in the can, it's finished. I know we're like the first stop on this tour.
Yeah.
What's the MO now? Like, where do you go from here? What's the broadcast kind of
Well,
plan?
we have our online release, which is October 23rd. We have a premiere at the Austin Film Festival on the 21st, and on the 23rd, it's online on iTunes and on your video on demand subscriptions. So with all your cable providers.
What was
And
that
then-
date? The 23rd. Download it on the 23rd.
And then after that, there's various windows with digital distribution that happens. It goes through the sell-through, I believe it's called, and then it goes into Netflix and Hulu and all those sort of things. So subscription-based models. So it goes through all of that, and then in 2013 there'll be a hopefully broadcast on PBS. So
Cool.
yeah.
But what's fun is in the next 2 weeks before the release, the U.S. premiere. It premiered in the U.K. and is on Sky TV in the U.K. But on our way up to the 21st, when it's released U.S., we're taking it to 8 universities. You're the first. Thank you for hosting. And
Yay.
and what's exciting is that we're talking to the generation that could solve this question. One of you in this room could solve the authorship question. This is an open question. And it's going to be your generation that's going to do it. Both cases are circumstantial. The one you were taught in high school, the Stratford man wrote it, circumstantial case. Earl of Oxford, circumstantial. The smoking gun is there to be found, and you might be the generation. And so, or someone in the next 8 audiences might be that audience that does it. So good luck.
Cool. Now, Jonah, I think you're around here somewhere. Are we going in terms of getting student questions or audience questions?
Whenever you want to open it up.
Sure. Are you guys comfortable with taking some
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
from the audience? Oh, wow, there we go.
There are microphones on either side of the stage, so.
So we're going to open this up to you guys. Are there certain things that you guys want to discuss or questions in terms of not just the subject matter, but also in terms of the filmmaking process? Anyone? No one? Yes.
What was it like working with those actors?
Which ones?
All of them.
Like Vanessa Redgrave,
Yes,
and
especially her.
they're wonderful people.
I like
No.
them. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, they're lovely people. They're
Sir Derek Jacobi, top class.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're
just-
legends
They're
in
legends.
their field.
Charles Beauclair, who you heard a lot from him about Oxford's case, he gave us 3 interviews. Phenomenal stuff. Like I said, so much didn't actually make this cut. So there's some great stuff from him. Vanessa was tricky.
How
but-
so?
Flying a crew out to New York City and then
Cancel.
canceling the day before, that kind of tricky.
That'd be tricky.
And then
Yeah.
having to rework your schedule around DC, shooting down there and back and forth. It was, yeah, it's fun.
And then Jonathan Bate pretty much accused us of being Holocaust deniers because we were denying Shakespeare. So you had a wide range, and it was fun. It was really fun.
So
But you can't under stress what Mark Rylance, Sir Derek Jacobi, and Vanessa are doing. They're the leaders in their field in the Shakespeare acting community. And they're willing to put themselves, their head above the parapet. They're willing to walk out to the world and say, I doubt that the man from Stratford wrote the plays. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage. If you know anything about the debate and how vicious the Stratfordian Orthodox community can be against people who take this courage to do this. And we're pro-inquiry. That's the biggest reason that we're doing this film, and the reason that we're out here is not to say this guy did it or that guy did it, but to reestablish a respect for inquiry, for asking, for debating, for discussing. Because without that, where are we?
I mean, we went to the Folger Shakespeare Library, which we wanted to film at because Oxford's Geneva Bible is there, and so many, the Ashburn portrait is there. And they declined, obviously, to let us film there under the premise that there was no Shakespeare authorship question. And this film was really about, there is an authorship question. Mark Twain, Sigmund Freud, Charlie Chaplin, these people are engaging this for 2 centuries. You can't tell me there's no authorship question. So more than anything, because I wasn't put on this earth to tell anybody to believe one thing or another, free inquiry and free thought is absolutely paramount in my world. I wasn't put on this earth to tell people what to think or feel, But to say that there is no Shakespeare authorship question when you've got some of the most profound, brilliant minds of all time, Orson Welles, Leslie Howard, saying, wait a minute, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like you guys probably lived of what Dan Brown was going through when Da
Oh,
Vinci
exactly.
Code came out.
Yeah,
like it's
I know,
sort of
exactly.
shaking and rattling the existence of something that's been established and kind of believed. Hence the religion kind of comparison. Is there a question over here?
Yeah. Because you had the 9-hour edit, I was wondering, did you ever consider breaking it up into a series?
If you want to pay for that,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Even if
Yeah.
it's like on like PBS, like I could even see something where it's just like 5 segments of just an hour and like 20 minutes each.
You know what? Maybe you can help me with those negotiations, but it's very difficult just to get a 43-minute program up on any established network. But yeah, I mean that maybe for an extended.
Well, that
DVD
is the
Blu-ray.
that is the beauty of it, is that when we sat down with Roland in London, I'll never forget it, life-changing meeting where he said, yeah, all right, I'm going to let you guys do this. And he said, shoot long. We have rights to that footage for educational purposes. We can take this stuff around the world for years to come. That's testimony to his generosity and his dedication to the question. And I can't stress enough how generous he's been. So yeah, the footage is in the can thanks to him. It's just, like Aaron says, extremely difficult.
And authorship isn't easy. It's a huge story to tell. And our dream was to take it to like an HBO and do a multiple miniseries. Maybe one day we'll do that, because the story needs quite a few hours to tell.
It's a good idea, though.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And then I had one last question. I was wondering, when you said it's up to our generation to figure it out, do you mean analyzing his works and like coming with new insight, or like finding new material that like past generations haven't found that would support one argument or the other?
That's a great question. The works still need exploration and examination. Your generation can definitely do that. There are also unexplored archives throughout Europe. There was a tight censorship in Britain. I think that a smoking gun will be found probably in an archive on the continent, in Italy, in Spain, Germany perhaps. There are so many unexplored archives that might have a letter from Oxford, or from Francis Bacon, or from the Stratford man. We may actually find out, thank God, that the Stratford man actually left England and actually toured Italy, so he could have written the 14-play set in Italy. Wouldn't that be great? But there is nothing like that. So we might find that piece of evidence in a letter, anywhere. So,
And encouraging your professors to engage in the controversy more than anything. You have the history department over here, and you've got the drama over here, and you've got the English department over here, and they're not exchanging their information. There's some actors like Sir Derek Jacobi, who's played Hamlet in every decade of his life. Same with Mark Rylance. They come with a specific skill set and insight that would benefit the historian, or the historian who knows something about the Essex Rebellion and goes, okay, yeah, I'm going to revisit this Earl of Southampton. Who is this guy? So if you got the English departments and the history department and the drama departments engaging in the question, that'd be half the battle. But we can't seem, the question, I should say, has had difficulty breaking into academia. So encouraging your professors, take a look at it.
I'm curious, after having enjoyed doing this, is there any other subjects you'd like to explore?
You saw a taste of it in Act 3. We made a conscious decision and battled it out 10 minutes in Act 3, the third part of this film, where it gets into that political dynamic. There is so much evidence supporting some of the theories that were introduced there. That's probably going to be the next film. We had a lot of that evidence when we were in the editing room, but ran out of time and just couldn't put it in the film. There is so much more there. But we're primarily interested in stories like the Shakespeare authorship question, like the Da Vinci Code, where there seems to be a truth out there that seems to be suppressed, we're interested in. And so we'll always stay in that vein, I imagine.
And then I guess, contrast. I mean, Roland Emmerich, you're not exactly associating it with a historical account of the authorship of Shakespeare. I mean, what was that kind of relationship in terms of, obviously they gave you carte blanche in a lot of ways, but Aaron, I know your background's a little bit more big blockbuster, high
I just want to blow
production
things up.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that something that, is Roland or Centropolis looking to kind of parlay things a little bit, or is it, I know he's working on this White House.
Yeah, there's no documentary attached to the White House down, so. But, no, I mean, these type of projects come up every once in a while, these really interesting, controversial stories. And I'm sure we'll probably do something down the line like this, but we'll leave it to the ladies to dig deeper into the authorship issue.
I think
Definitely.
Roland was always fascinated when art and politics intersect. So I wouldn't be surprised. He may not go back into authorship because he got burnt pretty hard by the establishment. They actually did a preemptive strike against Anonymous and Roland prior even to its release. The orthodox establishment is who I'm talking about. And I don't think that Roland really imagined how passionate and voracious it was going to be. But I think Roland will always be interested where art and politics intersect, and I look forward to him.
Yeah, Laura, explain that a little bit further in terms of, because you're talking about the release of Anonymous and then that into the, what was kind of what obstacles are you kind of referring to in terms of?
Yeah, the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust and the governing bodies of the Shakespeare Birthplace story or the Stratford story actually put together a 60 minutes and hired some of the best actors and politicians throughout the world to produce 1-minute segments of why the authorship is ridiculous, why Shakespeare from Stratford wrote the plays. And they put this on the internet worldwide and blasted and did a lot of ridicule, did a lot of campaigns of bad press against Roland and the authorship question. If you look into the reviews of Anonymous, they're never reviewing the film, rarely reviewing the film. They're reviewing the question, how stupid it is to look at the question, the heresy behind that. And so they put together a very strong campaign to try to discourage people from seeing the film. And it was very effective, actually.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. It's interesting.
They have a lot at stake. It's a $1 billion industry, the Stratford industry.
And did you
Like
find that Sony
Disneyland.
then stepped down a little bit in terms of we're not going to fight this battle? You can always.
We don't have to answer
Yeah.
that
Okay.
question.
I've got.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
Is there a question up here, though?
Yep.
Yeah. My question was, during the filming and specifically the interviews, did you ever find it hard to separate yourself from the theories or making your own and trying to separate yourself from the theories and just focusing on the actual film or just the inquiry in general?
Good question.
Well, this is a great question because it gets to the heart of the authorship question. By the work, do we know the workman? Do you think you know Shakespeare by reading Shakespeare? Do you think an author reveals themselves in their artistic creation? If you believe that, then you're going to find that we exist, our ideology exists in our film. And to try to, as documentary filmmakers, to separate yourself from that. We watched 15 years of the anti-Stratfordians not getting a mainstream voice. Were we dedicated to giving them a platform, a fair chance to get a platform? Yeah. So is there a slight bias? Yes. But it's only balancing the scales. They've had 400 years of their story, right? So, yeah, it was hard to stay neutral, but we did give the other side a chance.
There's some tense moments.
There's some tense moments, and we took the high ground and didn't show a lot of the really negative, calling us Holocaust deniers on camera. We took the high ground and decided not to put that in. Did we want more Stratfordians to show up? Because this is a problem. They're not in this room. I wish there was a Stratfordian throwing tomatoes right now because at least they're showing up in the
Too good for my
room.
reviews.
They don't show up in the room, and we need.
There's a few here.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you are a Stratfordian. If you are, please speak up.
See?
Because we want you to be here. We want you to overwhelm us with the evidence for the Stratford man. We'd love that because we're still open to the Stratford theory. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? Both for.
Anything from the Stratfordian camp? Oh, I got excited.
That was cool.
Any filmmakers?
How many filmmakers in the room?
Most good.
Good.
Excellent.
How many documentary filmmakers?
Excellent.
Excellent. Because this is kind of a different kind of documentary. Had the pleasure of working with feature film footage. It's a good thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I imagine when you're mentioning that you had like a 9-hour cut of it,
Yeah.
how much of a challenge that would be to compress 9 hours, like a 9-hour cut, to about an hour and a half. And I was just curious how you tackled a challenge like that. Like, what sort of strategies did you use to condense something that like worked all the way down to that?
You have a good cop and you have a bad cop.
Bad cop.
but go ahead.
I actually, when he said, you know, would you do anything different? We took a longer time with what we call the radio cut, which is really just trying to get the interviews, you know, moving and connecting and interwoven. So we didn't get to spend as much time on picture. We wanted a whole nother story to be told through picture itself, through the portraits and the documents that we didn't get to. We wanted much more of the Shakespeare canon, so you could actually see Oxford's life come to life in the actual Shakespeare canon. So we didn't get any of that. But tell me your question again.
Well, I just imagine that condensing something like that
Yeah.
was so difficult. So how did you decide what to weigh as like more important?
Yeah. Well, I had in my mind those 17 scenes across 3 acts, and we knew that we had to deal with the Stratford man, which quite frankly I didn't want to deal with. I thought PBS Frontline handled it in 1989. But here's this whole new audience, a whole new generation who may not know about the Stratford man, and they come out of this anonymous film and they go, oh, what's the deal with this man from Stratford? So we knew we had to spend that much time in that. And in the middle section we had to introduce the candidates and then get Oxford as a fighting chance in this dogfight. And then try to weave that whole political dynamic that is Act 3, which Roland was so successful at doing in Anonymous. If you haven't seen the film, please get it. Bringing in the fact that if you want to know the truth about Shakespeare, you've got to explore the history and the political dynamic at work. It's absolutely crucial. And so we knew that in order to compress that and keep pulling it down, that we had a percentage, and it had to weave in a certain period of time. And so many things had to go.
It's a painful process, and the editing room is a painful place to be sometimes. And you have to cut your best line that Vanessa has because you know it's not going to serve a concise narrative that you've got to get told in 60 minutes or 80 minutes. So, I mean, it's a painful process, but you just really have to make the tough decisions and then have a really good producer that's saying, girls, you can't be long-winded here. You just can't. And
You're still cutting another 10 minutes off.
But the compression came from, there was whole aspects where we were going to bring in the Shakespeare works themselves, gone. The whole argument about is art autobiographical in some way or another? Does an artist reveal himself whether he wants to or not? All that gone. Shakespeare and Elizabeth, drawing those 2 major icons of that period together, so much evidence connecting Shakespeare with Queen Elizabeth, and I'm not talking about William Shakespeare Stratford. There's no evidence whatsoever that the 2 ever met. She never mentions him. Remember, Shakespeare is considered the soul of the age, yet Queen Elizabeth and King James never once mention him. So there's a whole section on that completely wiped out. So there was a lot for the compression, but it happens. And I loved the editing room. It was extremely painful. There were some days where I said, I can't go back there. I'd call her, because I was in LA in the editing room. I said, there are days where I can't go in today. I just can't do it, because all your weaknesses and all your strengths are revealed there.
On that note. Anything else? Oh, a couple more. All right. Actually, if you guys could ask questions in the mics, I guess I'm supposed to tell you that so that gets recorded on the broadcast. In the corner?
Yeah, hi. Before, when you asked whether there are any Stratfordians in the room, I guess I would fall into that camp.
Great.
Welcome. I'm David Kathman. I run the Shakespeare
Hi,
Authorship
David.
website.
We've seen you before.
I don't know if you've seen it. On the website for the film, there's no link to our site, but it's been up since 1996, and it explains why Shakespeare scholars don't take the authorship question seriously. There's a lot of material there, much more than I can,
Yes, I've seen your
Absolutely. We know your work very well.
And so I just wanted to introduce myself.
Thank you.
Tell people about the site. It's just shakespeareauthorship.com, all one word, no dashes or dots or anything like that. And I was actually one of the 60 experts on that Standing Up for Shakespeare thing that the
Yep.
Birthplace Trust did. I contributed one of those,
Yes.
which they asked me to do. And I don't really have time to sit here and argue about all the points and so forth.
Drinks?
But I just wanted to encourage people to go to our site and if you want to see the other side. I mean, and this was an interesting movie. I mean, it was I'm glad that you got Stanley Wells and Jonathan Bate to give their side of the story. I mean, there are other things I could have said if I were in the movie, but it sounds like you tried to get as many people as you wanted to.
Yeah, we really wanted James Shapiro, and we negotiated, and Michael Wood as well. We negotiated, and just getting them to come to the table, engage, was really, really difficult, and we really would have liked them to. And our website, I do have to apologize, we're premiering in a couple of weeks, and the whole website's being redone, and your website is absolutely included when they revamp the website, and it goes live with the trailer next week. So Last Will and Testament, themovie.com, you will find David Kathman, one of the leading Stratfordian voices in the country, is in our presence right now. And thank you for coming out. It's fantastic to have you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Just a couple other
Equal
questions.
opportunity. You have more questions here in the center? Anyone?
Yeah.
Well,
You
thank
want
you
to
guys for
go to
coming.
the mic?
You have another one? All right. Yep.
I was curious, did you guys use a professional editor beyond someone just pushing the buttons on a computer? Someone who helped you with like creative decisions?
This is interesting.
Or did you just do the edit yourselves?
No, we had 3 different editors who, one was from Nat Geo in DC, so they were definitely professional documentary editors, and then also in Los Angeles we had 2 different editors. And they definitely, they play a major role in documentary filmmaking, just because there's such an interaction between the director and the editor. So, yeah.
Having said that, we had the privilege, some films don't allow it, but Lisa, the director, was in the editing room just about every single day. So that's a privilege as well. To have that collaboration between a professional editor and a director. Makes it long, though, and expensive.
I'm also curious, what would you say you learned the most from a filmmaking standpoint from this project?
Good question.
Good question. Go
The
ahead.
technical side?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Digital world.
Technical side, we started shooting this film on the 5D, which I'm sure all you guys have used several years ago. And at that point, it was just coming to market, and it's a fun little toy, but it definitely has its limitations. And especially in terms of media management and everything else, and that is something that is a big headache, especially if you don't have an assistant editor or something like that dealing with that on the day. So that was a good learning lesson, is to stay on top of media management.
Yeah, because seasoned editors from the past, if they don't really know the emerging media and the digital world, all of that skill is kind of lost unless they know the digital side of things. So.
On the tech side, yeah.
And the tech side is such an amazing component because it can blow your budget really fast if you don't.
Yeah, and media management.
Media management, and know your radio, know the radio cut that you want early, know the story early.
Right.
When going overseas, I'm curious, did you hire new crew at all, or did you fly crew over from the United States usually?
When we went overseas we hired crew in Germany when we were shooting in Berlin, and then we also hired crew in the UK. But we did bring our DP with us. It was a friend of mine, so I got him kind of cheap.
Yeah.
So.
But we had the same DP, which is really a privilege for us to have him all the way through. But yeah, we had.
But like gaffers and stuff like that, we definitely hired when we were over there.
11 people went throughout England, crew, fairly large crew.
So.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah,
Sure.
great.
Sure.
It's cool. I didn't realize I had to use the microphone. So I'm in the. No, am I good? Okay, I'm in the digital cinema, course. That's what I'm majoring in, screenwriting.
Mhm.
And my teachers keep telling me I need to analyze every film I see for like the climax, the plot points.
Yeah.
What do you think the climax is in your film?
It's a great question. What do you think it is?
See, I honestly thought your climax was when you said that quote where it says Shakespeare. And like the second that quote came out, I'm like, ooh. I had like this feeling like, that's it. I'm like, that's when you got me. And I was like, they might be onto something right there. What do you think it was, though?
Again, we saw this as episodic, and it was kind of a meditation for us, this film. So it leaves some of those checkpoints that we all kind of look for in traditional cinema. You know, where's your 11 o'clock hour? Where's the climax? Where's the wind down? We do have a wind down, but we don't have, you know, you have to look for it, which I think is good if you're awake and you're willing to really look at the film and watch its weave, and feel the narrative, and when it's going to tell you something that means something to you. Because authorship is about hooks, and the hook for each person is going to be different. So we didn't have an overt big moment, but I think there's all these little hooks, and you'll each take away your moment. I think your climax, your hook, which was kind of intentional, but not intentional in that we had these episodes planned hoping that we would reach more hooks than having one hook, that we'd have more of them to reach a wider audience, to see what piqued their interest. For some people, it's like, the Joe Shout engraving, I never looked at it. That's a ridiculous portrait. For some people, it's that simple. For some people, Shakespeare, possible pseudonym, okay. For other people, it's like, Edward de Vere was married to Lord Burleigh's daughter? Oh my God. You know, so it's different. But I'm really glad you asked that question.
Okay, thank you. I was just like, I noticed what you're talking about. Like every scene, right before you fade into the next scene, you would kind of have a little hook where you sell it a little bit more.
It's like,
you keep trying to hit it.
Is that going to do it for you? Is that enough?
And I waited till like that moment. I'm like, that's good. I'm like, that's when I knew. And the rest of the movie, I was like.
It's funny you should mention that, because our third editor, when he saw that, he said, game changer.
See,
right there. Yeah,
right there.
For him it was the Shakespeare. For some people it's Pallas Athena. For some people it's Hamlet. And Hamlet's dying plea, please tell my story. For other people it's the sonnets, because that's where the author speaks in the first person, the personal pronoun I. I once gone to all the world must die. You know, that's it. For me, it was that moment. I'll give you where I knew when we captured it in the interview that I said, that's the beginning of Act 3, is when you shift into the whole doors sequence where you shift into this kind of strange world of political, they're shutting doors and trying to shut people out. Because to me, that's authorship question. It's all these shut doors. What do you mean? Open the doors and talk to me about what's going on in the history, in the drama, in the theater. 400 years ago and today, we're still trying to work this out. Same dynamic at work. And to me, I knew right then when they said, you know, that we don't take anything for granted in the Elizabethan age. Be willing and open to explore everything. I knew I had it there. That would be my moment that I would take away, is like, don't take anything for granted in anything you study in university. Find out for yourself, explore, ask the questions. The truth will be revealed through you, not to you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sounds good. The theme was like inquiry, and I kind of I got that vibe from your film, so much appreciated.
I was actually looking at this film from an actor's point of view and someone who actually studies Shakespeare. And I was wondering, because I actually have to do certain projects on sonnets, and how would you look at the sonnets differently if it was William Shakespeare, I believe is how you pronounced it, or if it was, you know, the Earl of Oxford? Like, how would it be looked at so differently as an actor? Would it have to be acted differently, or would you put like a different character on it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's an amazing question, actually, because I think authorship could be solved on the sonnets alone, because the sonnets throw up so many questions. This is the only time that Shakespeare, whoever he was, is talking the first person. Okay, so I am revealing myself. I'm talking about what I know, what I feel, where I've been, what I'm doing. And when you start to look at those sonnets and what they're talking about, it starts to disqualify a lot of candidates. So I think that you would find a much more personal expression. I think that you would find a heartbeat And I think an actor would then be able to tie into a motive that they never could see before, and would create a much more emotional performance when revealing. I think Lisa would be.
It's really a question of motivation, which an actor is always looking for.
Yeah.
What am I thinking and feeling? What's motivating me to act or feel or whatever? And there's so much more motivation there. I think that the sonnets and the plays themselves stand up regardless of who the author is. That's their transcendent quality. So I'm not pro-authorship in that then we know exactly what the plays mean. I don't think he intended that. They're so transcendental, like all great art, that even knowing the author, you still get to experience your own feelings and thoughts.
One thing that I want to make a comment on that I definitely took away from that is, like I said, like I do study Shakespeare as an actor, and I think seeing this documentary just gave me a lot of freedom to explore it in different ways, and I just wanted to thank you guys for that.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
thank you. Because there's a very rewarding journey ahead of anyone who's willing to just try on a different biography of the author onto the canon. You're going to get 5, 6 different layers that you may not have had before. So will it ruin your experience with the plays? No. If anything, it's going to deepen your experience. That's been our experience anyway, is you get far more out of the plays and the sonnets than you could before.
Cool.
Thanks.
We have another question here.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I mean, I remember you guys referred to yourselves as winning the lotto earlier, and so can you just elaborate on that in terms of, you know, aspiring filmmakers, aspiring documentary creators, in terms of both of your guys' profession and your experience in raising capital and funding for your art and what you guys do?
Again, it was the lottery. I mean, we had spent 15, 20 years studying the subject, and you have to be tenacious, and you have to know who that can make things happen is taking a look at something that you're interested in and talk to them and pray that someone answers the phone and then listens to you and gives you that chance. But you've got to go looking for it. It's not going to come find you. A lot of people in the authorship community would have wanted to talk to Roland but didn't ask. Sometimes it's just asking and getting in the room, and if you have something to say and they want to listen, it's a perfect situation. Will it happen for most filmmakers? Probably not. Did it happen for us? Yeah. And we were really, really fortunate because we did win the lottery, but it doesn't happen for most documentary filmmakers.
How did you guys find out that Anonymous was being made? Was it like in a trade, or were you guys?
It was a trade. Okay. It was an article that said Roland Emmerich's taken on the Shakespeare authorship question. He's going to blow up the Shakespeare authorship question, and.
But that said, we knew that there were other scripts, and scripts had always come our way because people knew that we were documenting the question. So whenever a new script was circulating around Hollywood, it would somehow find its way onto our desk. So we read many scripts before we read his. And would he have been our A-list pick of directors? We never suspected in a million years that it would be Roland Emmerich in the end, but that's some of the beauty of it.
Yeah,
really, and it ended up working for both of us, I hope. But we knew several scripts, and Warner Brothers in particular had been optioning many Shakespeare authorship books over the years. So we knew it was a matter of time, and actually the film that was anonymous was was called Soul of the Age when we came on board. And that was owned by Tom Hanks's company, Playtone, until Roland bought the script. So, wow, you just, I have to believe, because I didn't, again, we didn't know anything about Shakespeare, certainly didn't know anything about the question. If something, and you suspect something, especially in your formative college years, if something reaches out and grabs you and you feel like it's almost prophetic or there's a synchronicity involved, go with it. Absolutely go with it, whatever that passion is, because chances are you're going to, that passion itself is going to attract someone else who's working in the same thing, and then you create that momentum that is film.
Do you want to talk about documentary funding, or?
We had a few options with funding this film. We were talking with, as I said before, History Channel and Discovery and what they would put forward, and we were talking with Sony and doing a companion piece to Anonymous. But with all of these people involved, you lose a lot of the control of the film. Yeah. And in the end, Roland wanted to control what the film was going to be about. And he wanted to give Lisa and Laura the ability to tell their story too. So in the end, Centropolis internally funded the film, and so
Yeah, and they're
that's why it's for them it's the lottery, because it's you have that creative control. When in actuality, if you have two big guys coming in with all the money, they're gonna look at the cut and be like, yeah, I don't like that.
I don't like the cut.
No,
And Discovery
so-
Channel wanted to cut it down to 40-some
minutes.
minutes and dummy it down and recycle it. And you have to make those tough decisions. You've got the money. They're going to show it. Do you want to do what you have to do to it to get it done? We said no. And
Yeah.
it just
Bummer.
forces you into different...
And then my next question is, you're in negotiations with, Netflix, Hulu, and you
Yeah.
guys are already overseas. In terms of compensation to you, if you don't mind me asking that, is in terms of compensation to you, how does your negotiations with those affiliates and establishing that kind of partnership, do you guys come to an agreement as to how many views people view, or how does compensation come on your end for the dedication and all the work that you provided in this piece?
You don't usually make your money back.
That's what I hear.
Unfortunately.
we got paid to be the director producers, and we supplied the service, and we're paid according to that. But it's really up to trying to get the executive producers
Money
recoup.
back.
It's about
Money back.
obviously
So
recouping
all
your
recoup,
investment.
All recoup.
So it's a long process, but with each of these, different types of distribution with Netflix, all the online varieties, we actually went through a distribution company called Gravitas Ventures, and they basically handle negotiations with all the different online outlets. So basically Hulu, Netflix, iTunes, everything else like that. And then they take a cut, though, of that as well. But they handle all that paperwork and all the legal aspects of it and all that sort of thing. So you lose a little bit of money, you don't make as much, but in the end, you don't have to do all the
That's true. Hassle.
bad work. Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
but you can also, there are ways to, as an independent filmmaker, you can also contact Netflix and their acquisitions department and actually work deals, but you have to have something that they believe is going to get all those hits. And so it's really about building the marketing behind your project early on, getting people involved on social networks, that sort of stuff. So you can say, you can go in there and go, well, I've got 20,000 people who are interested in the subject matter. You're going to want to put this up. So there's ways to go about doing it independently as well.
A lot more options now for independent
Yeah.
documentary filmmakers than there were even when we started this film. So it's an exciting time with social networking and all that. It's a new game, obviously. Just Sundance, the success story of Sundance and all the other ones. And it's a fun time to be an independent filmmaker. Competitive, though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Over here? Question or no?
I thought there was someone up over there, so that's why I kind of was kind of waiting. But I guess since I'm up deck now, I was kind of interested in how you guys started from this kind of single question of about the mystery of William Shakespeare and the kind of the writing of his plays and how it became the story that it came to be. Like there were probably no doubt like several ways that you could have gone about this, and probably in the scope really big that trimming it down to the time that it eventually be was no doubt a great task. I think what I was just kind of interested in hearing is like kind of how you kind of approach that, like kind of your own approach, kind of your own unique approach until how you get to this big 400-year story matter into like less than an hour and a half.
Right. There are so many aspects to this Stratfordian problem, the authorship of the Stratford Man, and we could have gone into so many different things, but we chose to focus primarily on Diana Price, and her book is called Shakespeare's Unorthodox Biography. And rather than focus on all the problems with the Stratfordian case, we focused on the fact that there is no evidence linking him to anything literary. That's one example of how you just take a vast subject and you go, okay, we're just going to focus on what we think is the most compelling. I really don't care all that much that we don't have any evidence that he went to school. Well, we don't have evidence that a lot of people didn't go to school 400 years ago. That doesn't mean he didn't. So I didn't focus a lot on that and just went, okay, what is the most compelling case against the guy? And it's like, there's no literary paper trail in his lifetime. You have to go to the posthumous evidence, which is the first folio, the Stratford Monument mention, and the Sweet Swan of Avon, which, by the way, doesn't link Avon and Stratford together. They're separate. But that's how you compress. So we decided to focus on the literary paper trail that does not exist for the Stratford man. For Oxford, it was, okay, what could possibly be a reason why, if he was the author, he's not going to admit it? Well, it's because noblemen didn't write for the playhouses, and if they did, they had to take on these pseudonyms. And oh yeah, there's this family connection, and oh yeah, there's this political dimension. That's about all you could hope to possibly accomplish. And we probably, like Anonymous, took on too much. But I hope it was coherent enough for you to start to feel the layers involved that make you kind of go, oh, you know what, that political aspect is what interests me. I'm going to go look at that now. Or someone else would say, I'm going to go see if I can find more evidence to support the Stratfordians. Great. Or wow, that Oxford connection with the Earl of Southampton and Lord Burleigh and the Pembrokes, and wow, he was part of the London Theatre. I'm going to go track that down. So we're just hoping that each little moment or each scene was just a stepping stone for someone else to take the lead and go out and find more.
Be good.
Cool. I mean, that might be a nice segue to wrap this up. I thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for
Congratulations
having
on the
us.
film.
Thank you. Coming out.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, DePaul.